welcome, Leader Equation family. We're so excited today. Listen, I've actually been waiting to find a pair, and we've had a few, Christy, on here that are dynamic and have been together for this long, but I've been on the hunt for a leadership team that has been together for years. And you guys, these guys have been together. So working in real estate, 8 years, but technically 13 years, which is super fun. And we'll talk about, but they have been driving this business and building it year over year. And they continue to grow and take on new businesses and do amazing things. And so I'm thrilled today to be interviewing them because every time I ask the question, who out there like doesn't lose people? Like who out there does like everybody love and they stick around all the time? Dave's name comes up and like immediately it's Dave and Jenna. Like the two of them together keep
kind of like Sonny and Cher,
It is. It's a fun thing. So at any rate, welcome
Except
to
they
the Leader
stayed
Equation.
together. Sorry, that was a bad example.
No, it's good. But today we have Jenna Cloward and we have Dave Hooke of the Dave Hooke team, and they're in Central PA. We're going to let them introduce themselves, but really quickly, if you don't know, I am Linzee Soprani, CEO of Soprani Consulting. We're the top recruiting and consulting firm in the country for all things real estate. And then I'm here with my lovely co-host, Christy Belt Grossman, CEO of Ops Boss Coaching, the ultimate resource for training and coaching real estate ops bosses. Welcome to the Leader Equation. So really quickly, Dave, just give us a brief description of how you got into real estate, like how long have you been in? Jenna, you'll do the same, and then we'll kick it over to Christy to do the quick fire questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Linzee, for having us on, and Chrissy. So Dave Hooke, we've been in the business right out of college. So Penn State, only job I ever really had was got right into real estate. Sold one home my first year, had no training. It was a train wreck. I quit 7 times. And then I just started going door to door in 2003 and slowly built a business, and we built a brokerage from there. So it's been 19 years in the business. Now we have a team and, as you know, some other real estate entities. And Jenna is just such a great partner in the business.
Love it.
Yeah, so I am Jenna Cloward. I met Dave when I was actually 15 or 16 years old. My mom needed help as the office manager of Dave's independent brokerage. So I came on board answering phones, doing paperwork, making, carbon copies of contracts. Went to college, graduated, and got my real estate license right out of there. So Dave and I have been working together for 13 years, but I've officially been on the team since he started about 8 years ago.
That's amazing.
You guys do not look old enough to be doing the carbon copies. Is that even possible?
I remember them. I wasn't licensed then, but I remember them.
She didn't have a driver's license then.
No, had to walk from school to the office.
You can never recruit too young. I love that. We're at our retreat this year. We're going to do a panel of kids of people in real estate. So
nice. You
can come recruit from that.
Awesome.
Well, awesome. Thanks you guys so much for being with us. I think, Linzee, what are we? Season 2, episode 12. And we're going to do a quick fire really quick so people get to know you. We already did how many years in business and together. How many on the team in the beginning? What does your team look like, and how many people do you lead across businesses?
Yeah, so how many people on the team right now? Jenna, do you know, is it
like 18 or 20?
18 with VAs, maybe 20 or 21 folks on the team. In the multiple sort of businesses that we have, I have great business partners and a CEO of a brokerage, and all said maybe 160 or 70 different people across the various businesses. Was there another question about the team?
When you started, Dave, how many people? Was it just you solo agent, or?
Yeah, when we started, it was maybe 34 people in the brokerage that we had at the time 8 years ago. And it was just really, you could say, me as a solo agent and Jenna as an admin helping with the back office.
So you guys have really blossomed. Okay, let's see. What else do we want to ask you? What book impacted you the most?
You want to go first?
Take that.
No, Dave loves his books. Mine are nothing philosophical.
I'll go with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. as a book I read early on, and I would say that's probably up there. My faith is important to me, so anything faith-based has impacted me tremendously, but business-wise and life-wise, that will probably be a huge one.
Love it. Jenna, what would you throw in there?
Yeah, so I'm a total bookworm, but I'm a fiction bookworm. So the books that I read are ones that Dave recommends and makes us read. But I say
a fiction book that impacted you too.
Yeah, no, they've been impactful for sure. Our team switched to using EOS, as you guys know, a few years ago, and I don't think that we would be where we are and the leadership team that we are without it. So that was definitely a huge one. And Radical Candor was a good one for me with leading people. It's not what I'm great at, so it's helpful for some of those difficult conversations.
I love that. Thanks. Our listeners are always looking for what they should be reading. How many streams of income do each of you have? Jenna?
2. So I work for the team. I also do SOI business, and my husband and I own some numerous rentals.
Awesome. Dave?
Yeah, and we have the team, and then the brokerage, and then of course Keller Williams model. So we have some passive profit share income there, and then we do have a flipping business, and then also a consulting company, and then also rental property portfolios. So and then a little bit of housing development, minority ownership. So 6 or 7 roughly.
Did you guys know, if you guys are watching live, you're seeing him count on his fingers. That was awesome. Yeah. So if you are joining us for the first time on the Leader Equation, we are chatting with owners, founders, entrepreneurs, and their shotgun leaders inside and outside real estate about what adds to the leadership formula, what subtracts, what divides, and most importantly, how you can multiply your results. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Lynn, so we can dive into the important conversation. Oh, yep. I skipped superpower. Wait, we're going to do their superpower. Jenna, what's Dave's superpower? And then we'll go back to the real meat.
So I think Dave is one of those rare leaders that is a great visionary and integrator. A lot are good at one or the other, and he's very good at both. He has like this, we call him a Rain Man because he has this really unique ability to like do things at a very high level and not focus on anything else until it gets done. And he's just great at leading people. There's a reason that I've been here for so long and have no plans to go anywhere else.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. Dave, what's your superpower?
Thanks so much, Jenna. So Jenna has been with me so long for a number of reasons. She is super organized, and she has a ability to take complicated things and simplify them, which is a lot of times the exact opposite of me. So I tend to take things and complicate them. And Jenna can take complicated things and just make them super simple, which I really appreciate. And then the third thing I would just say, she's an incredible work ethic, just organization and work ethic, and very consistently productive, high capacity individual.
Love that. Good. That gives us a good glimpse. Okay, Linz, take it away.
It does. Well, I so want to just jump into like, how's Dave such a great leader and all those things, but let's start. Walk us through. There was a brokerage, an independent brokerage, and Jenna came into your world, and just talk to us about what did that world look like and how did you guys transition? Because I know you're with Keller Williams now. So just give us a little bit of background there.
Yeah, we had an independent brokerage. It was just started out with myself and a couple business partners in 2003, and then 30 or 35 agents in that brokerage. And Jenna came into that world. Jenna's mom was my first employee ever. I was 23, and we put an ad out in the newspaper of all things. And I didn't put the address of our company in there, and this because I didn't want people like showing up. So we put our fax number in. So people were faxing resumes, but they didn't know who they were applying for exactly. And this woman shows up in the front office and asked to see me, and here's Jenna's mom. And I was like, how did you find even who we were? And she's like, oh, I did my research. And so I very quickly hired her because she went above and beyond. And then she worked with me, and Jenna came into that world when she was 15 or so, and helped her mom, who was my main office manager of that brokerage. And that brokerage was a great sort of family-owned, small community feel. But I was one of those people that, was doing too much and thought I was required to do everything. And I don't know if I maybe was one of those that wore that as a badge of honor, like the busier I was, the more important I was. And I remember those days I was like on the verge of burnout a lot. And we had to make some decisions. And through a number of conversations and processes, we decided I was going to focus on my sales business as a realtor and hire my business partner at the time to run the brokerage and pay him. And then we ended up sort of merging in and eventually buying into the Keller Williams franchise locally. And it allowed me to have a leadership team run that company and then put all my energy into the sales team. And so that's when Jenna transitioned into my full-time administrator, my right arm. And we built the team, starting 7 or 8 years ago.
And I'd be really rude, and you can say no, Jenna. I told you before the call that I'm a high D. How old were you when you started working on the team with Dave?
On the team, I would have been 24, 25, I think.
Okay. You guys have already given us so many important topics as we delve in. Like just the thing about your mom, Jenna, and I hear that and I'm like, that's the question Linzee does this every day more than I do, but I always tell people, how did you prepare for the interview? Like she was like super resourceful and prepared for the interview, like right there off the top. And then the comment, Dave, about wearing busy as a badge. Man, that's a whole topic right there. But let's keep going on your relationship. Sorry, the squirrels are going crazy today.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so Jenna, you worked with him for a little bit, right? Doing some odds and ends with your mom there. And then I'm guessing he approached you about a full-time position. Like, what did that look like? And how did you know you wanted to do it?
I think I actually approached him. I was working for another team within the brokerage at the time, and he had an opening. And it was just an opportunity that I knew that I didn't want to pass up. So I actually approached him. He needed a full-time assistant, and it just worked out.
Why?
I remember that interview.
It was an opportunity you couldn't pass up. What made you think that?
The team that I was on was great. They're friends of mine, but I could just tell that the opportunity was just way bigger with him, and he was going, somewhere that I just wanted to be a part of it. So that was a tough one. There were tears at that one because I felt bad, but I couldn't pass it up.
Man, so Dave, she comes to you, she says she wants to do it. You've seen her work ethic. She's obviously in the office in another team. What did that look like for you? Did you know right away you wanted to be in business with her?
I did. It was a challenge though, because, I was wearing the hat of broker owner. I was trying to be supportive to another team in my own brokerage. I had my own sales business and was hiring an administrative assistant, and that administrative assistant was working with the other team. So those teams and those agents are my customers when I put that hat on. And then at the same time, we have there. So there was some tension there. So I had to just be really process driven with that. And it was okay. We're just going to be transparent with everybody. Fortunately or unfortunately, there's an opening. Somebody's applying. We're going to treat that interview like all the other interviews that I'm having, and the most qualified person will get the job. And if it is her, we'll do a transition plan that's as supportive as possible to the other team. So it was Jenna was in my opinion the most qualified for sure. But it didn't make that tension any easier, right? So I remember the interview though, and I remember there were some pain and tears with the inter-office transition. And then when she got the job, I remember Jenna doesn't cry easily, but I remember there were tears. She was like, yes. And it was an emotional time. I'll never forget. I remember the conference room we were in and everything. And
Dave's our crier. I'm not the crier.
I'm a total crier, like all the time.
That's awesome.
Well, so you had other candidates, Dave. What was it about Jenna that made her stand out?
Yeah. So she was very, I really appreciate stability and consistency. I knew, and like core value alignment, I knew her mom had worked with me for years, and her family. And I had a really good understanding of Jenna's character and her upbringing and her parents' values. It's not often that you get an opportunity to work with somebody that you've almost seen brought up in the office, right? And you just understand that the work ethic's there, that they're honest, that they're trustworthy, that they're stable and consistent. And she was qualified. So hands down, I mean, she was just the better candidate than some of the other people we were interviewing.
Dave, what's your disc profile?
Yeah,
Am I
it's
reading your mind, Lindsay?
So good. That's so what I wanted to ask both of them.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's funny. Mine is a mid D, and then the I is just, so I'm a really boring disc. The I is like a 60%, and the S is right in there, and then the C is just a little below 50. So it's this really boring. Nothing's extreme about my disc.
Jenna, what's your disc?
Low D, low I, high S, high C.
So it's interesting to me because you said, Dave, one of the things that you thought was a positive for you is stability and consistency. And what Lindsay and I hear from people all the time is I want someone who can run fast, and stability and consistency don't always mean running fast. How has that worked out for you guys?
Yeah, do you want me to take that, or do you...
Sure.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that, have you ever read The Compound Effect? Yeah, so like just the idea of, I was an economics major, so I value like data and that sort of thing. And when I say I value consistency, I literally value it, like not just in somebody's character, but I literally value it from how it can build a business. So I'm more drawn to people and processes that can be repeated over time at the same level consistently for like 10 years than I am for like a really bright star that might burn out quickly. And so in our company, I just have valued that in people as well, that show up every day at the same level and are very consistent, because I do think that compounds. Like, it doesn't show up for a long time, but like it compounds in culture, in reputation, in numbers, in finance. All of that consistency ends up compounding over time, and so I really do value that. And Jenna is that type of person. I don't know. Does that make sense?
That makes 100% of sense. What I'm seeing is the hockey stick, right? The consistency, and then all of a sudden it starts building up here.
Yep.
I'm a big believer in the baby steps and piling in the small wins. And I love the consistency aspect. You guys are getting to mastery. We were talking before the call about how many people have been on your team for a long time, right? And how many teams have all this turnover, but you guys have such stability that your numbers have been able to kind of tank up. I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and so Jenna, you obviously saw great leadership in this man, and what really drew you to him, and what has just kept you on board and moving with him in the same direction?
Yeah, so like I said in the beginning, he has a way of like really being a great integrator and a great visionary. Like he does his homework on everything. He's not, one of those team leaders that squirrel and just hops on the newest fad. He researches everything, doesn't take decisions lightly. And he's just grown his team very slow and methodically. And it's great to be a part of that, because I just feel like we've done it in a very smart and careful way. And the way that we've grown our culture. I mean, we used to be a small team of 4. It was me, our sales director, who at that time was the buyer's agent, and Jenny, Dave's wife. And we had a great culture, but we didn't have to lead a whole bunch of people at that time. Yeah. And we've just done a really great job of, as we've grown, really taking culture into account and setting standards for people. And I think just growing in a really healthy way. So it's never felt, yes, we're busy, we're doing a lot of volume and we're doing great things, but it's always just been steady and kind of easy. It hasn't been super, super crazy for anybody, I don't think.
Which I love.
When I hear you guys talk about that, the word trust keeps coming into my head, that because you're so consistent and you've built very purposefully, that you also build a lot of trust, that teams that are just going after the next shiny object and changing direction all the time don't have that level of trust. And I'm guessing maybe part of that is why people have stayed with you so long.
Yeah. I would attribute, the EOS system to that. We do quarterly conversations with each other and our staff and our agents every quarter, and those are huge. I mean, every 90 days, it's just a real conversation with each other about how things are going, what your plans are. It's super helpful. I think those are one of the best things that we ever added into our business.
Yeah, and I would add to the trust thing, that is something, back to a question you asked earlier, why is Jenna so important? It is the other things I said, but I know that I could trust her. I mean, Jenna there is nothing that she doesn't have access to in my life, right? She has all my email accounts. She's in all of my stuff, and sends things to me that I need and keeps things from me that I don't need and handles them. And I know that I can trust her with, essentially anything. If it can see my eyes, it can see her eyes, and that's super important.
Did you have that trust for her immediately as she came onto the team because you'd already observed her in the wild, so to speak? Or did that trust build over time? And at what point did she have access to everything?
Great question. So 2 types of trust, maybe. So I can say, as long as I can remember, I've had the personal trust in her character, from just being a part of her mom's work ethic and all of that. I've been able to trust her with more responsibility. So I didn't entrust her with certain responsibilities when she was an administrator, as I do now that she's the operations director. And that was just a learning curve for both of us, right? In training, like Jenna mentioned, management conversations. We weren't formally trained in managing people and results through people and that behavior or that activity. So we had, I took multiple books and worked for about a year with Jenna and our leadership team through each book, every chapter, and then debriefed and then documented, and then had a HR company audit all of our processes and had an attorney audit that audit and brought, and everybody sort of learned that together. And then I was able to sort of walk away from that part of the business and trust, so character trust always, higher and higher responsibility, and trusted as time went on and we learned together.
Love that. Learning curve and earning curve, both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
What I love about the methodical, I mean, it's just what we're seeing and hearing over and over again, which I love. It makes my heart happy because I don't feel like we hear that in our industry at all, like ever, barely ever. I mean, you hear it from the operations people, right? And so, Dave, it's fun for me to listen to you talk about that stuff. Do you feel like you've been methodical on who you're bringing into the culture, and have you made mistakes on that, and how'd you learn from that?
I think we are definitely methodical on who we bring in to the team. We hire very slow, and we follow the KPA step by step in our interview process. We bring the team on board. Everyone on the leadership team meets someone first. A core value fit is the first question that we ask. If we're looking to hire somebody, have we made mistakes? Yeah. There's a few that we let in that we didn't really see their true colors until they were here. And, we coach them in a healthy way off the team into different opportunities. So yeah, we take that very, very carefully when we're hiring people.
Yeah. So like the career visioning process from Keller Williams, we have a whole Trello board that Jenna put together for that process. And we do follow all 4 conversations by the book: team interview, defense, the whole. So it's a long, 4-step process. It could easily take us 3 or 4 weeks of interviewing to hire one candidate. I mean, just thinking about our recent ISA hire, we gave somebody an opportunity job offer this week, but our sales director and myself probably talked to, I don't know, Jenna, 150 candidates, talked to, right, and pre-screened 150 candidates to that one hire. And even then, we always say we're about 60% sure, and then the 30, 60, 90 will be 100% if they are a long-term fit.
Which means you have a solid 30, 60, 90 that everybody goes through, and you meet with them regularly to make sure they're hitting their benchmarks. So you're inspecting what you expect all the time.
And we promote from within. So I was Dave's executive assistant to transaction coordinator to operations director. Our sales director, Drew, was the lead buyer's agent to operations director or sales director. And our marketing director was a buyer's agent. And now, he's in our marketing role. So we've had a good core group, and I think that promoting from within has really been helpful for that.
You guys mentioned core values. What are your core values? People always want to know that.
Yeah, so we have positivity and optimism, empathy and compassion, grit and hard work, accountability and discipline, growth in the pursuit of excellence, and a team player. So 6 of them. Our core passion is to enrich lives. So that's what we wake up to do every day. And specifically, it's that of our clients, our community, and our team members. And then we have measurables attached to how well we're doing in those 3 components.
Dave, did you have those with you from day one, or at what point did the 2 of you collaborate? Did the whole team come up with that?
Our leadership team at the time, when was that? 2017, maybe?
Yeah, I think 18? It was John had just come on board as leadership. So yeah. It had just been the 3 of us. And we bounced them off the team too.
Yeah, so definitely leadership team spent a day off site, and then brought the team in to get feedback, the other team members, and then landed, eliminated and landed on those 5, and then we added 1 last year.
I love that. So you were fairly mature at the point that you kind of integrated that or articulated that.
Yeah, there was maybe six of us total, I want to say, 6 to 8.
Yep.
Did you have a ton of buy-in when you went in that direction? I feel like you must have, right?
I think we did, because we included the team in the process. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we just did some exercises that were really healthy to come up with those core values that included everyone in being super vocal about their ideas.
We put everyone in the hot seat. We made everyone sit in the front of the room, and we described their best qualities, and then we circled at what kept reoccurring for everybody.
Their superpowers, yeah, and we started to see reoccurring, like, all right, well, you guys like our culture now, so let's just define what the superpowers are. What are the words that keep coming up in our culture, and that defined who we were looking for and the guardrails we would put on that in the future.
I think from hearing your story, you were able to do that because you had people on board who were in a concert with your values at that time, even though you hadn't articulated them, and also that had been with you and you had a trust level. I see some teams do that exercise, but it's not necessarily the right people on the bus. Mm-hmm. So they end up with this mission, vision, values, and whatever that don't really match who they want to be.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
It's funny, the ideal team player, I'm guessing you've read that. They have such a cool exercise around that, and really like figuring out, where are people on the bus, and do they have all 3 of the traits, right? Or do they only have 2? And then they name them and all kinds of fun stuff in there. Do you feel like you went through a process like that with trying to figure out, what it was, or was it more like, no, we're just going to throw the things up that we really appreciate about each other?
I think that we did go through sort of a process like that, but it wasn't exactly like that book. We actually used the process in the book Traction.
Great.
There's a whole chapter on core values. We literally did like sentence by sentence that exercise. Yeah. And it worked really well for us.
I love that. Okay. Very cool. So people can easily go to Traction and do that. Let's change gears just a little bit, because we know that it's not all rainbows and unicorns with you guys. We know that you do fight sometimes. And we heard before we started here that Dave actually loves that. And I wouldn't say fight, you challenge each other, right? And so walk us through, what's one of the hardest things you guys went through? What did that look like?
Yeah, so the thing that comes to my mind, and it wasn't like, I do like to, like, if there is an issue, I always say, if you're brushing your teeth and you're like running a narrative, like you're having a fake conversation with somebody in your head, you need to go to that person and have the conversation. If that happens like one time, that means that you need to have a conversation about it. That's an issue. And we have an issues list that we put issues on every week, and we don't like Vox people with the issue or text people with the issue. We have a channel called Voxer, and use like or call somebody with an issue. We put it on the issues list, and then when we're in the face-to-face meeting, we literally have to talk about the issue, right? So I do really love that process, only because when you do it over and over again and you're super intentional, even if you're conflict averse and your tendency is to your leadership style is to disengage, like you're tempted to do that. If you have an issues list and you just tell everybody this is how we're going to process problems, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jenna, but you used to hate processing through stuff like that, but it becomes much easier when you do it that way systematically over time. And I love that because it makes everybody better. And if I hold something in and I have an issue with Jenna and I start to write a narrative, that's going to build resentment. It's going to build mistrust, and it's going to fracture the relationship. So as far as retention and just inter-organizational, communication, having an issues list and talking through the things on that issues list once a week is like rocket fuel for culture. It's really helpful. For us, we've had all sorts of issues because I think we wrestle with them very quick. Like if it's an issue for a day, it's going to get thrown on there. We're going to talk through it. So nothing ever really festers. The one that festered probably longer than anything, and neither of us said anything about it, was when I promoted Jenna to operations director, and I, a little bit of a control freak, and just continued to send her stuff. And because she was new in the job, I would like check up to see how she got it done, which is fine in a 30, 60, 90, by the way. I think that's to be transparent about that. But that went on for like, I don't know, Jenna, how long?
Years.
Like years. And she didn't say anything, but it was really annoying to her. And I was still doing it. And like, I would like bring up, hey, did you get to this? And, she could tell I was sort of keeping track. And I had like a Jenna list that I had sent her.
He has a notes app.
Yeah.
We'll say you had a notes app.
Yeah. So what happened? How did I forget? Like there was a time.
I think it was during a 90-day check-in. It was during a quarterly conversation, and we always ask what's working or not working, and
what do you vent to your spouse about?
What do you
and what
vent
can
to
I
your
do to
spouse about? Yep,
that's a huge question.
And he would give me tasks throughout the week, and on like a Friday at 2:00, everything that he sent me for the week would come in an email, and he'd be like, "So how'd this, and this get done?" And they were always done. So I was like, the check-ins have to stop. And it was an opportunity for both of us, because I saw the opportunity to say done to his emails or got it. So he knew that I was on it, and he realized that he didn't need to check on me like that. And by checking on me, he was micromanaging me and not allowing me to take ownership of it. Because if something was missed, I was like, Dave will remind me on Friday anyway. But once that training wheel was off and I wasn't getting those check-ins anymore, it was up to me to then make that happen. So it was growth for both of us. And Dave knows one of his blind spots is letting go of the vine. So it helped him see that as well.
I have to just say this because like most rainmakers, right? And Christy, I know we're probably thinking the same thing. Most of them don't have the capacity that Dave does, right? Like it's Christy and we're a lot like Dave. So, but most of them don't remember all the things until they look like for it 2 months later or whatever. And they're like, whatever happened to that thing? Why isn't it done? What's going on? And then this ticker tape happens and they freak out. And then they start looking at everything else that they feel like they might've told them to do. And they make the giant list, and then it becomes chaos, right? It's one of the biggest problems I feel like we see. So like what is my question around this? What would you say to people, Dave, that like are doing that to the Jennas of the world? And then I feel like I need to flip that around, because I mean, truly that's something that needs to stop in so many different scenarios. But like Dave, a lot of us are afraid to let go of that,
Yeah. So a couple things. Once I realized that I just like didn't want her to fail or some weird, like I was always checking, and that I put this massive ceiling on Jenica because she wasn't owning anything. She was just taking tasks and doing what she was asked instead of owning the results of the task. And when I understood that allowing her to take ownership of the results of the task, number one, would take a lot of pressure off me, but number two, would allow her to personally and professionally grow through failure. That was really helpful for me to understand. And so instead of tracking whether the task got done or not, we changed everything to, we track everything in our business has a number, and everyone knows with clarity if they're winning or losing. And so Jenica's number in operations is a net promoter score. And we review the net promoter score or the satisfaction of all of our customers at every weekly L10 meeting. And that's the operations department net promoter score. So for me, we'll send her tasks and she has this massive job in our company, but I don't at this point really care anymore how she gets it done or if she gets it done. What we care about is the net promoter score. And if that falters, then that goes on the issues list and we'll unpack that together rather than me following up on every little thing. So now she has the freedom and responsibility to accomplish her function, the net promoter score, at her will, how she wants to do it without me checking in. And that's super freeing for all of us. So my biggest advice is stop tracking the micro stuff and start tracking the macro stuff in a systematic way that's reviewed transparently with everybody in the company.
That was beautiful. I just want to replay that again. That was really good.
It so speaks to your consulting, which I'm loving all of that. So I know people are going to want to know how to get a hold of you after this to talk about some of that. But Jenna, flip side of that, and let me actually ask a question. So the first time that you failed, because I would imagine at some point something did, falter, right? He said he was going to let go and let you go. When you did fail, what were the ramifications, or were there any? Like, what did that look like? Do you remember?
So I can't think of it at a specific time. As far as ramifications go, no one really gets in trouble on our team. There's never been any yelling or punishment or anything like that. We talk through issues and processes, and if it's a process issue, we fix it. I don't know. I can't really think of a specific failure. If there's a mistake, it's a process change. And I will tell you, as soon as this conversation happened and I took ownership of it, I'm sure you've heard of Dominate Your Day, DYD. I immediately implemented that system and still use it. So things that he used to check up on me on are now on my radar. They don't get erased from my DYD sheet until they're done. So I just got really, really good at follow-up. I feel like I probably made more mistakes and missed more things when he was checking up on me than I do now that he doesn't, because I know it's mine. It's my baby.
Yeah, because when two people own things, no one owns it. And by him checking up, both of you owned it, so no one owned it.
Yeah. And Lindsay, to the consequences question, we do have a process. We have a performance improvement plan. We have minimum standards in the organization. And Jenna's never had a performance improvement plan. The first step, if I make a mistake or Jenna makes a mistake or Drew or anybody makes a mistake, is it goes on the issues list. And I always say there's 3 problems in a business that I'm aware of, 3 main buckets. There's people problems, process problems, and training problems. And 95% of issues in business are process problems and training problems. If somebody's not a core values fit or they're malicious, that's a people problem. But most of the time, I believe as a business owner, when there's what I call an expectations reality gap, here was the expectation, here's the reality of what occurred. That gap, we as business owners start to write a narrative and we put information in that gap, like they're not working hard or there's something wrong. And the reality is when we just put it on the issues list and have a conversation, they tend to, that gap gets filled with what really happened, which is usually oh, well, that makes sense. very few things are actually people problems where somebody's malicious. We usually, when we understand what the expectation reality gap issue was, we fill it with truth. We find out, oh, we could probably change a process, or we probably need to administer some training in that area. And once the person understands that, there's training and accountability, that will improve and the expectation will meet the reality again. And I just think that that process, issues list, where's the gap, training or process issue first. And then if it keeps happening and it's a core value issue or a people issue, we can have a harder conversation and a performance improvement plan. But honestly, most things don't ever get there. If the person's gotten through a 30, 60, 90 on our team, they're probably a good people fit, and it's mostly a training or process problem.
And I want to go back to the issues thing, because this is really intriguing me. So you guys, first of all, I love that. And we've had a couple teams on that have followed that process. But despite the fact that you guys have known each other for a long time, you knew each other before you got into business, you have a very high trust level, you still had this one issue that was really important to you, Jenna, that you didn't bring up or put on the issues list. And Dave, you didn't put it on the issues list. So the question I have around that is, how do other people coming into your team and into your leadership team who don't have the level of trust built that you guys have the level of trust to actually put things on the issues list? Because we see this a lot on the teams that Linzee and I consult, where there may be the rainmakers comfortable doing that because of their behavioral profile, like they're high D. If there's an issue, we're just going to talk about it. But the ops people maybe don't have that same trust built up yet. What would your advice be to them to create that safe space to be able to do that?
Yeah, so I do quarterly conversations and issues lists with the operations department. I have 2 transaction coordinators and VAs. And it does come with a level of trust. You do have to have some trust to be able to do that. But I always prep them for their quarterly conversations, right? So they're working and not working lists. They have to bring that and prep it in writing before they meet me. So they can't, get in front of me and get scared and not want to say it. Their list is done. And I do the same thing for Dave. I am conflict adverse. So if I walked in there and didn't have it written down, I'd be like, never mind. It's not that big of a deal. But if it's in writing, I have to say it. So I prep them, they prepare. And to build that level of trust, if they have an issue, fix it, talk to them about it, listen to them about it, and actually have an actionable to take from it that resolves it. If they just tell you what your issue is and you don't really do anything about it, that's not going to breed a high level of trust, and they're not going to bring you issues in the future. So I think it's preparing, and and if they say they don't have any, I just say I'll wait and I'll give them a few minutes. Dave taught me that one. Awkward silences are fine, and eventually we'll drag something out. And I think operations people, they're the hardest to drag it out of, right? My L10s with the leadership team, we have 20 issues and we can barely squeeze it all in an hour and a half every week. My operations department, our L10s last 15 minutes and I have 2 issues on the list. We're just not conflict people. So it is a little extra work, but as long as you listen and, do something about the problem and make it better, I think it just gets easier over time to fix those issues.
So give us some insight into that L10 meeting with the leadership. When you're in there and you're like, I'm coming at it from a different angle and everybody's talking about it, because I think that's really healthy and we don't see that a lot. Give us a picture.
Our issues aren't necessarily people issues. They can be all facets of issues in the business, or it could be a rock that I'm working on and I just need help getting unstuck. So there's lots of issues that can be on that list. As far as the format of it goes, we have an hour and a half every other week. We have an hour, I think, every week. And there's a strict format. So we talk about a leadership podcast. We'll do takeaways from that. We start with positive focus. We'll go over our numbers, hit or miss. How are we doing for the quarter? And then we jump into it. We have to-dos from the last meeting and we go through and mark them done if they're done. And then we jump into issues. And the person who added it to the list sets it up and explains what their issue is, what their problem is. And then, whoever it applies to most, they kind of just talk it out in that meeting. I don't know. Do you want to add anything, Dave?
Yeah, the only, that's exactly right. And the only additional thing that I would add is if I have an issue with Jenna or my marketing director, John, personally, a personal issue that's not like a business related, like something he's doing just is annoying the heck out of me and I need to get it off my chest. I'm probably not going to put it on that issues list, by the way. I'm expected to go talk to John privately and in person immediately and get it off my chest. So we always say, talk to the person. If you have an issue with a personal issue with another person on the team, go talk to the person that can solve that issue. Otherwise it's gossip. Right. And so that's probably not, that personal like thing is probably not going to come out on a leadership issues list. That's if I have an issue with a direct report or they have an issue with me, the quarterly conversation is structured for that to come out. Like what do I do that annoys you is a question on there. What do you vent to your spouse about? How can I make your life better? And when they don't answer, like, wait as long as it takes, like, give me one thing that annoys you. I know there's something that just drives you up the wall. That's a really helpful interpersonal, like, flesh all that out every quarter type of conversation.
Jenna, would you do me a favor and give me a script? Because Lindsay, I'm betting you see this too. I see this all the time. The ops people are the hub, the heart of the team. They're in the office frequently, more than everyone else. And so everyone comes to them to talk, right? Mm-hmm. So when one agent comes to you and they're talking to you and they're frustrated with something about somebody on the team, give me the script that your ops people use so that they are not in the middle of all those conversations. Because I loved what you just said, Dave, about if you don't go directly, you're now gossiping.
Yeah, so I have a pretty good example of that. One of the transaction coordinators and an agent, they're great people. They like each other, but when they work together on a transaction, sometimes there's bumps. And we're conflict adverse, right, in my department. So they want to vent to me about it, and then I wanted to fix it. So I want to be the one to go talk to that person. And I did that for a while. I failed in that. And then finally, it happened 3 or 4 times and it came up again on a quarterly. And I said, I think you two might just need to get in a room and talk about it. And I can sit there and facilitate it and I can help and get the ball rolling. But ultimately, it's you two that have to fix it. And I can't be that middle person. We've had one really good example of that. And it's just going to the person that can fix it. I can't fix it.
Love that. Great script. Thank you for doing that. I know a lot of people listening struggle with that.
Well, and it's interesting too. I think operations can get to a point too where they're hearing things all the time about stuff, and then it can make them question the leader too, right? And what I love about you guys is like, man, I mean, Dave, you are so open to those conversations. Like, how do you think you got to that place? Was it because you read traction and you believed in things, or like what, or was this just who you always were?
No, well, it's not, definitely. I'll share something that I hope it's okay, Jenna. So this is a little bit more personal. And I don't even know how much of this Jenna knows, but in my old company, which Jenna worked out when she was in high school, I didn't do that. So one of my leadership tendencies was to sort of fix everything myself. Addiction to gaining other people's approval, people pleasing tendencies, got my value and sense of worth from being liked. And if anybody had an issue, I saw it as my problem immediately, not theirs. And it was my job to fix it so everybody felt better. And that led to super unhealthy stuff, right? That I would like maybe not be transparent about something that I thought would upset another coworker, and then try to like make it better by appeasing this coworker and pandering to them. And you do that for a lot of years, and that can build a really unhealthy toxicity. And in my last company, working with Jenica's mom, who I love dearly, that dynamic happened for too long. And I remember having a conversation after like a year where I felt like her mom had distanced from me and I had distanced from her. And there was another manager sort of involved in the leadership team, and the leadership team was not good at what we're talking about. And I remember a conversation where we ended up having to go into a back room and talk with the other manager and me and Jenna's mom. And it was a really hard conversation. And I just remember I was emotional. Her mom was emotional. We had such a good working relationship for so long. And then something happened like over the course of a year or two that there was fracture in that relationship. And I believe that the result of that was not addressing issues. And I put that on myself. Like, I feel like that was my fault as a leader because I had a tendency, and it made me feel better to keep everybody happy than actually addressing the issue. And I don't ever want that to happen in any of my companies again. And so I just read a lot of books on conflict and forced the team to sort of go through those books and educate ourselves, because I never wanted anyone to feel that dynamic that I felt I had created before.
That was a great leadership lesson.
Yes.
I always tell people, people on the operations side don't love the word conflict. Like, Jenna, you've said I'm conflict averse maybe 5 or 10 times already today. And I think that's a very normal thing. So I like to just say conversation.
Conversations, for sure.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
I love that. And it's funny. I mean, I just want to circle back because I think people will rewind this part over and over again, or I hope they do at least, because I think more leaders need to think this way, Dave. And Jenna, I mean, because you guys have done this together. I love that you're asking, what do you vent to your spouse about? I love that you're asking the question, like, what do I do that annoys you? I mean, honestly, Christy and I started this podcast because we just wanted to learn more about leadership from other leaders that were amazing. And we knew we needed to raise our lid and that this would be a really great way to do it. And, I used to sit there and fight with people when I'm washing my hair, and I'd forget. I'd be like, did I shampoo? Did I condition? I don't even know, because I'm sitting there fighting, right? Same thing with the brushing of the teeth. And so what I love is that you've brought that into the work world, because I've always known that that's something I do and that's when I have to talk, but I have never talked to my team about that or put that in place. And how powerful is that to actually ask those questions and to be open to the feedback? 'Cause I think that's even scarier. It's like, what do you vent to your spouse about? And that's
do I want to know?
Yeah. But I think if you're asking that over and over again, man, it must you get used to it, right? And it becomes less painful. I'm sure in the beginning it was scary, right? For anybody who's looking to do this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, our sales director just told me in our last quarterly that she's started to have an issue. When I asked that question, it was like, when you give me constructive criticism, the way you're delivering it isn't helpful, was what she said. So now this is somebody I worked with for 8 years, right? And she's never had that issue before, but in her new role, we talked then in our whole leadership meeting. I brought that to Jenna and John, and we talked through it. And I asked each of them, I'm like, I need counsel on this. Is this delivery helpful or seem fake, or I'm patronizing? What we need to understand the issue, because if I keep doing this to her, maybe I'm doing it to other people. And it was really helpful. How long could I have gone and done that to her till she just was like, I don't like the way this person treats me, right? And then that could have happened to the other people. So those conversations are so important for me to know.
Well, they're super important, especially in the operations side, because on the operations side, if you don't have that structure and system set up for that feedback, they're just going to hold it in, and one day they're going to walk in and quit.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the conflict, they're just going to leave. So when you we started the podcast talking about stability and consistency. What I'm hearing is you have this system that provides stability and consistency in how you communicate. And because of that, when you hear stability and consistency, you think slow. And what it does is it actually accelerates your success because you tackle the problems faster.
For sure. Yeah, I think so.
Love that.
Yep.
So much power here. And I mean, it's literally, I only have 5 more minutes. I have so many things that I just want to keep asking you guys, but I know, we know that you guys never thought about parting ways, which I think is awesome. And that I think we know why, because you guys are really tackling things head on, and you're really dealing with issues, and on a team level, you're dealing with issues. Just out of curiosity, have you ever had anybody come into this world and just be like, whoa, this is not for me. I don't want to talk about these things. Or do they really adapt really easily and they're able to have these conversations? Like, what does that look like?
No one has really come in and been like freaked out by it. I will say the leadership team, we meet and have these conversations way more often than like our agents. Right. Our agents meet with our sales director, you know, every 2 weeks, I think, and they have quarterly. So they do, but they're not like in the issue like conversations with all of us.
Okay.
I mean, our leadership team, no, we all enjoy it, and we've kind of like grown as leaders with it. We've never like known leadership without it. So it's always just been there.
Well, actually, Jenna, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, it would be a good follow-up with our sales director, actually, Drew, because she, like, around issues, because she's the one directly managing and has all of the salespeople, right? So it's like herding cats.
That's
right?
What I was gonna say.
So if you want to see, like, the most legitimate dynamic around addressing issues, you're going to find far more of them in that department than in our leadership team, who's very cohesive, or the operations department, just because there's less of them. So I do think that if we talk to Drew, she would say, yeah, when some people come on the team, like she does have to have conversations around this cadence. And I've heard her say, I've had to go back and explain to him, if he has an issue, he can't go to that person and that person. And she's, had to write performance improvement plans for people around. But I think after a performance improvement plan and after 2 quarters of this, you start to see people, and we've heard people say, I see now why we have to talk about it. Like one of our agents was on a different team, and he said, when I first got here, I didn't understand why you guys did all this stuff. And he was like, now I get it and I appreciate it. So I think it takes a little bit of time.
Well, that's interesting, because the question that comes to my mind around that is, that sounds like the people on your team have a fairly high EQ, or like, it's like, are you recruiting for that and selecting that during career visioning, or are you teaching that as they come on the team?
I think both.
Both, yeah. Okay. I will say, if we have, and we haven't had any people that are like opposite core value fits, no one that's been like toxic or anything like that. But the culture that we have and how open we are, it does make people stand out like a sore thumb if they aren't adhering to it. So it is easier to spot that and coach them to get better, or if not, then find other opportunities for them. It makes it really easy to coach and, lead when you have such a strong, core team.
That's what I was wondering, because I was, you just think about these operations, especially operations, like I could see in the beginning when you implement something like this, them being like, like we're going to talk about all the things I did wrong, right? And they really take it so personally. Do you know what I mean? Like when they do something, they're like, oh, that was this person that said that, didn't it? Well, I didn't mean to do it that way, or I didn't mean to make that mistake, or whatever. And they take it really personally. How have you coached them out of that mindset? Because I'm sure you've had to.
As far as operations people go, it goes back to radical candor and just telling them that you're not in trouble. You're never going to be in trouble. It's like Dave said, a process or a training issue, and it's just a conversation. And if I'm not having that conversation with you, I'm doing a disservice to you and you growing as a leader, and myself, because I'm going to sit here and get resentment if I don't tell you about it. So it's just open conversations.
So good. Oh, you guys are such a breath of fresh air. It's so good, right, Christy?
It was awesome, super awesome. The level of clarity that the two of you have as leaders is pretty amazing. We don't see that often. I want to make sure people know how to find you.
Yes.
Maybe they want to join your team. Maybe they want to send referrals. So I don't think we even said where you are in the country. Let's tell them where you are and how they can reach you.
Yeah, so we're in South Central PA, Greater Harrisburg area market in Pennsylvania, specifically Carlisle and Camp Hill. You can reach us, you can go on our Facebook page. The Dave Hooke Team Facebook page is a great spot. You can private message me there. You can email me at dave@davehooketeam.com, dave@davehooketeam.com. That will go to Jenna, by the way, and she will make sure it's handled really well and get it to me. Those are the two probably best places to reach us.
Awesome.
I love it. And actually, really quickly, the consulting around businesses. So if they are like, holy moly, I need to have some Dave in my life, and Jenna, same email, right?
Yeah, dave@davehooketeam.com. Just shoot us an email. We can do a strategy session just to see where the issues are and see if we can add any value, or if we know somebody who would add more value, we'll let you know that too. But happy to do those as well.
Love it. If you're listening to this, you guys, it's Hooke. So, all right. Thank you so much, you guys, for being on here. You were seriously a huge blessing. I know you're going to bless so many people by listening to this. I really appreciate it. We will drop their information in the comments as well. And we appreciate your hour. We know how valuable your time is. So have a great day.
Our pleasure. Thanks so much, ladies.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.